On July 18, 2024, a father and his 3-year-old son boarded a plane from my city bound to northern India. The little boy was happy and excited to travel to a faraway place with his dad, but sad to leave his mother behind for a whole month. His parents were separated. Welcome to my channel, everyone. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's vlog, which will be an episode of my of missing kids. And today we're going to talk about Valentino. How does a parent explain to a young toddler that a beloved but not so meek and mild parent knowingly broke the law and cannot have any free access to their own child ever again. How do you explain that? More disturbing, how does a mother cope with the idea that her missing toddler may no longer be alive or may be in grave danger, very ill, and scared and frightened and alone? Well, Kamala's life pretty much ended when her 3-year-old son failed to return home from India the following month. And so they left on July the 18th, 2024, and they were expected back in August, and they never returned. Despite many setbacks, last week, a mother, Kamala, and her 4-year-old son, Valentino, finally boarded a plane in Delhi, India, and headed to my city after what seemed like an exhausting and very complex 5-month struggle in northern India. Now, what made this journey that father and son took from Canada to India stand apart from so many others coming to and from these countries? 2 paternal child abductions, to be very clear. And so the first was on July the 18th, 2024, when father and son, Valentino and Sunak, boarded a plane on July the 18th, 2024, to travel to India for an extended vacation. But the pair never did return in August as planned. So Kamala was very distraught and appealed to the police. And finally, on January the 31st, 2025, Kamala left Canada to go and get her son, and consequently fought a long and brave battle for 5 months. The second abduction occurred on April the 21st, 2025, just one day before a high Indian court issued the order for Sunak to submit the boy back to his mother, Kamala. And his mother was obviously the legal guardian. So what I'm deducting is that Canadian courts here had already given full custody of Valentino to Kamala, the mother. And probably Sunak merely had visitation rights, but he did have Kamala's permission to remove the son from the country for an extended vacation. In April, after that issue was ordered, Sunak's attempts to appeal it were prevented by Kamala's legal team in India. I'm very happy that she had that team. This order came after a massive and very successful manhunt for the boy and his father, who the boy, Valentino, was finally reunited with his mother, Kamala. However, to complicate matters even more, Kamala and her son, Valentino, were detained in India for weeks after the court ruling. As for Sunak, I'm not sure that he was arrested. I don't know. I don't have any idea or details on what happened, but in India it is not considered a crime for a father to abduct a child, or it's not considered abduction. But because Kamala and her son Valentino were Canadian, they went by Canadian law. And so that is how Kamala got her son back. So although this story has an apparent good ending and an ending, to say the least, it's not a cold case, it is one, this story is flooded with a lot of unease and pain. And there are probably memories of heartache and longing for this family team to become whole and complete again. But that would be an impossible dream, especially now after all the drama that took place in India. I don't know what Sunak's position or status in Canada really is. But if he was a law-abiding citizen, he would not have done this. My deduction is that he was desperate to take the boy. He probably loved Valentino very much. I'm not disputing that, but we don't know if he was a law-abiding citizen or if he harmed Valentino and Kamala in other ways besides this senseless abduction. What I'm asking is that what law-abiding Canadian would actually knowingly resort to such desperate and very damaging measures to just simply to hold on to his son that he already had probably a pretty good relationship with. Now, if Valentino was going to India with Sunak on an extended vacation, I'm assuming that they had a good relationship. Well, probably not anymore. The concept of universal law was officially set in motion in the 1500s by Thomas Aquinas. However, such concepts have been in use since ancient times. Universal laws are comprised of natural law, international law, and human rights. The Declaration of Human Rights enforces that all people are entitled to fundamental rights, regardless of personal and individual traits, such as background. The Peace of Westphalia was established in 1648. It defines the concept of sovereign nation-states. Kant's categorical imperative of a moral principle states that one must only act according to rules that comprise universal law. So then, Why are world societies still not on the same page about such issues such as child custody? The legally justified and moral tone of the outcome in this case, considering the context, is surprising to me. For a country like India, where laws vastly differ from North American laws regarding custody. But it's not simply enough to say that this was maybe an exception to India's norms. They recognize the fact that these two Canadians, or these three Canadians, were in limbo. A crime had been committed in the eyes of Canadian law, and so they cooperated, and that was wonderful. However, we all have to do better and get on the same page when it comes to legal disputes, as intense as custody battles that extend across the borders. So, guys, Kamala and her son Valentino returned home just last week after an ordeal. And I'm guessing that they are fine, that they will heal, and that somehow, I'm hoping that somehow, Sunak's relationship with his son will not be completely severed. I hope not. I don't know what's going to happen there, but I can sense that Kamala is a good and strong person, and she would, I think that Valentino has the best of mothers in her, and so I'm praying for them to stick together as a team, and I hope that all three of them manage to work things out. So that's about all I have for you today. I hope that you've enjoyed listening and watching. And indeed, this was a very interesting story. I hope they make a movie out of this. Although I don't see it as entertainment, I see it as very enlightening and illuminating. And I think we could take this case on as a model that would specify the need for greater clarity on international and universal laws. We need to come to a better meeting of the minds when it comes to critical issues such as custody battles. I don't think that custody battles were ever intended to be fought across the globe from two different countries. Thanks so much for listening and watching.